everyone. Hope you're all having a great day. My name is Erica Gonzalez, and I am with the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, representing Smoke Free Azusa and Smoke Free Claremont. Thank you for checking out our series for National Drug and Alcohol Facts Week, where every day this week, a coalition from Los Angeles County will be getting real and answering your questions about marijuana, alcohol, vaping, and prescription drugs. We hope that these videos inspire conversations about drug use and the addiction that affect our communities and young people. Just a quick reminder before we get started, Rethinking Alcohol and Other Drugs Coalition, or RAD, will be going live today, March 25th at 7:35 p.m. to answer any additional questions you might have about prescription drugs that we did not get a chance to answer. So let's get started. Today, asking all the tough questions, we have Melina O'Valley. Melina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Melina O'Valley. I'm 15 years old and I go to San Pedro High School. Today I am representing the Young Marines. We are a nonprofit youth organization for kids 8 through 18 or the completion of high school. We focus on leadership traits. We also focus on discipline and teamwork and character building, and we love to promote a healthy, drug-free lifestyle.
Great, thank you so much. So answering these questions, we have representatives from RAD, Belinda and Alfredo. Belinda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Belinda. I work with the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence of the East San Gabriel and Pomona Valley. And today I'm representing the coalition called RAD, also known as Rethinking Alcohol and Other Drugs. And I have Alfredo with me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alfredo Camacho. I'm the Healthy Communities Director at Day One, and I'm also representing the Rethinking Alcohol and Other Drugs Coalition.
Great. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So let's go ahead and get started. Melina, what is your first question?
My first question to you guys is, what does RX stand for?
All right, we're going to start easy. So RX, we actually had to Google this when I got this question, because this is a little known fact. RX, the symbol for a prescription, is actually it symbolizes the Latin word for a recipe or to take, and so that's the RX symbol that you typically identify with a prescription or RX. So that's what it means. It means to take, which is what you do with a prescription.
That's interesting. I did not know that. Also, what are some prescription drugs that are commonly misused? Also, what does it mean to misuse a prescription drug?
Yeah, so this is a very good question, because I think a lot of people don't know what it means to misuse of prescription drugs. And when we talk about RX drugs or prescription drugs, we're going to be talking about drugs that were prescribed to you by either like a doctor or a dentist, someone that, you have to get a prescription for. And so when we talk about misusing these, there's a few different ways people can misuse them. And in all reality, a lot of people often misuse these drugs without even knowing. And so one of the ways that you can misuse drugs is if you take it in a way that is not prescribed to you. So for example, if I was prescribed, Vicodin for pain, and it says, take one tablet every 6 hours, and I take one tablet and I'm like, I'm still in a lot of pain. So I'm like, I'm gonna take, another tablet, even though it hasn't been 6 hours. I didn't follow the directions, so that would be considered misusing the drug. Another thing or another way would be sharing your prescription medications. And I think this is something that we do a lot without even knowing it, or without knowing that it might not be the safest. So if you share it with, a family member or a friend or a brother, sister, loved one, that's a way of misusing it. Self-medicating or taking it to get high. So if you realize like, when I take this prescription drug, I feel kind of high and maybe I like it. So you're intentionally taking it, to get high. That's also considered misusing it. Or mixing it with other drugs or other alcohol is also another way that people misuse drugs.
Yeah, and it's important to understand that, when we misuse, there's like a level to it, right? Like we can go from just misusing, thinking that, I have a legitimate complaint. My head hurts or my back hurts or I can't sleep. And so I'm going to use, my family members or my friends prescribed drug, and that may be misusing. but it can easily go to abuse if you start doing it regularly on purpose, and you say, you know what, I like how this sleeping pill makes me feel, or I like how this opioid makes me feel. I feel good. That's when it becomes abuse. You're taking it to get high, or like Belinda said, you could be mixing it with other drugs constantly and saying like, hey, you know what? When I mix it with this, I feel this way. That becomes prescription drug abuse, and that's really dangerous. And it can lead to really dangerous things like overdose and death.
Do you guys know any? I'm really. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say. Go ahead, Melina.
I'm sorry, my internet's really laggy. Do you guys know any commonly misused prescription drugs?
There's a few commonly misused prescription drugs, and then there's kind of three categories. So they fall into opioids, depressants, and stimulants. And then maybe Alfredo, do you want to share the names of those and what they're used to treat?
Yeah. So opioids are the ones that are commonly misused right now that people are overdosing from. So, and then even those fall into two tiers, right? There's the prescription and then the illicit ones. But the ones that you probably have heard of is like morphine or Vicodin. Those are the opioids. The depressants are, those are the ones that you're taking that are like Percocet, Xanax, and then there's the stimulants that you'll probably hear, like the Adderalls. This isn't. Another stimulant is it's not prescribed, but it is over the counter. But you do need an ID. It's like the Sudafed. Those are a stimulant that people actually use to make meth. So there's those three different kinds, all misused and all prescribed or over the counter.
Thank you. So how can you tell if a person is misusing their prescription drug?
Yeah, so very good question. And I think this is something that we should all kind of know, right? Because I think all of us, at one point in our life get prescribed some medication. And so how do we tell if someone's misusing prescription drugs? And so some of these ways is if you see that a person is constantly going to the doctor to refill their medication, or if they're going to multiple doctors to refill their medication, that could be a sign. If you also notice that they're using their medication so fast, so let's say they're prescribed a medication that's supposed to last them, a month or 2 months, and they're done with it within a week, then that would be a red flag that you should kind of look out for. Another one is if they're maybe like sometimes people crush them and say, oh, I feel the effect faster that way, and so maybe crushing pills. If you see someone crushing pills or with crushed up pills like in their room or in their bag or whatever, that would also be a sign. And then also stealing medication. This is why it's so important that we keep track of our own medication, because if someone, is in our life that is misusing prescription drugs, it is so easy for them to, go into the restroom and open your medicine cabinet and take out 1 or 2 pills, because most of the time we're not going to notice if 1 or 2 pills go missing. So those are a few ways. Alfredo, do you have more?
I think just it's very difficult like to tell by looking at someone. I think one legitimate or illegitimate, but they say like, oh, like I lost them, like I need another refill now, like I just keep losing them, like I don't know where they go, or if they have a lot of like medicine, like those prescription bottles like in their medicine cabinet. No one should have that many at one time. You're prescribed them for a certain dosage for a certain amount of time, and after that you need to dispose of them. So if you ever do go to a friend's house and you're like, hey, I need hand sanitizers and soap, and you go in their medicine cabinet, which we'll do it, and you see all these pills, it's like, okay, that's not normal. So that's one way you could tell that someone may be misusing. They may not be doing it to get high or just really illicitly, but they're misusing. They're not using these pills how they should be used, and so that's one way you could tell. And then as far as like how you can tell with a person, I mean, if they're taking a pill that they're not supposed to be taking, you may see like a change of mood and behavior, sleeping pattern, those kinds of things. Maybe their weight gain. They may gain weight or lose weight. drastically, that's another way that you can tell as well.
Thank you. That's really interesting. This next question, I know a lot of people are guilty of this, and we don't know that this is wrong. I know that often people would share the prescription drugs with their family members or even their friends. Is that safe?
Yeah, yeah, really, really interesting that when before I started working in this field, I actually did this. I know that Belinda probably has stories as well about this, but it happens more often than we know. I think it probably is still happening. It will continue to happen, and we need to do a lot of work to kind of combat this. But it is actually really not safe at all. There's a lot of reasons. I actually one of the reasons that I tell people all the time is that you're prescribed a prescription that is specific to you. The doctor knows the kinds of pills that you're taking, and so they know interactions. They prescribe you. Let's say you have anxiety. There's a number of different medications they can prescribe you. So they're prescribing you the one that they know is best suited for you for the certain amount of time. And so when you're sharing pills with someone, and you're like, here, take this for your anxiety, or take this for your toothache, and you're like, it doesn't work, take another one, and it's not working, it's because it's not prescribed for you. You don't know how to take it. So definitely not safe. It can lead to misuse and dependence, which is not good. And sorry, Belinda, take it away.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And I think what is a little bit, I don't want to say scary, but like one of the risks in sharing medications is that if you're sharing opioids, I think like the statistic is 1 in 10 people who get prescribed an opioid develop some type of addiction or like negative consequence that comes for that. So imagine like sharing an opioid with a family member because they have a pain, and then they get like dependent on that, and it leads to misuse, and then it leads to abuse, and then people who develop a substance use disorder with prescription opioids, oftentimes they go to heroin, and so it's just like this waterfall of like effects that can happen from it. And so we just need to learn and educate ourselves and educate others and say like, hey, I know that might be the only medication you have right now, and I know you want to help a family member, but like let's do something else. Let's try maybe over the counter medicine first. If you have a headache, like let's go to the store and see if we can find some like Tylenol or Motrin or whatever the case may be, and then let's try to go to the doctor. And I know Alfredo, you touched on this, or you're going to touch on it about healthcare and things like that. And so we also understand that that may not be an option for some people, but let's try over the counter medicine first before we start sharing our prescription drugs.
Yes, of course, that can absolutely be scary. I heard that it's easy to make at home pills with like fentanyl or something like that, and maybe even gelatin. Is that true?
Yeah, so that is very, very, very true, and which makes it even more scarier, right? And so when we make pills, it's essentially like this machine that anybody can buy. Like I can get it, Alfredo can get it, Erica can get it, and we can, bring this machine home and we can make tablets out of who knows what. So, I can put like baby powder, fentanyl, and Alfredo will share a little bit about what that is. But it's very dangerous because I can make them look exactly like the real pill that a doctor would prescribe. And going back, if someone has an addiction or a substance use disorder, is abusing prescription drugs, at this point, if they're abusing it and their body is dependent on it, they may need that drug to feel normal. They may need that drug to wake up, to go to work. I'm not saying that that's good, right? They definitely need support, but because they need that, and maybe at this point they don't have any more prescriptions and they can't go to the doctor and get more prescriptions, they're going to go to somewhere on the streets or to find someone that's selling it illegally. And most likely that person that is selling that drug, it's not a real drug. It's not a real pill from a doctor. They made it or they got it from someone that made it. And so it's super, super dangerous because, a lot of the times it is laced with fentanyl.
Yeah, and so just to talk a little bit about fentanyl. So fentanyl is like the equivalent to, back when, Belinda and I were, about your age, Melina, the Molly or like the ecstasy pills that people were taking. Fentanyl is what the public health, crisis happening right now. And so the problem with fentanyl is that it's very potent. Morphine is really strong. It's a strong opioid, and it's very addicting. People can develop a dependence. Well, fentanyl is 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine, so it's very potent. You need about 2 grains of salt, size to overdose on it. So it's very small amount needed to overdose, and people are lacing a lot of drugs with fentanyl, a lot of pills with fentanyl. And California, one of the country's number one place where fentanyl related deaths are happening. And so very scary, very easy. Again, pills are, they can be made to look like anything. We don't know what's in them. They're just like, oh, very easy to take. So yeah, it's happening. It's happening in our state predominantly, and it's happening among young people. And I'll tell you a story later about an overdose death with something related with fentanyl and happening this way.
Thank you. So my next question is, what are some signs of prescription drug overdose so we can prevent these deaths?
Yeah, I can start. So prescription drug overdoses. So there's different signs depending on which drug you're taking. I would say the most common death is related to the opioid an opioid overdose. And so the signs that you can tell from that is with the most common one, or the most one that you could see, is that someone's unconscious, or they look like they're asleep. If you open their eyes, they'll have like pinpoint, like very small pupils. Their skin will be cold and pale. Their lips will be bluish. They may be choking. They may be making choking sounds or like gurgling sounds. And so those are some signs that you'll notice in people that have an opioid overdose.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important. And we hear this a lot, or a lot of the times, like, people overdose. One, it can be prevented, and the reason it's not is because people are afraid. So oftentimes where these overdoses are happening, or they're at parties or kickbacks where people are essentially doing things they're not supposed to be doing. So they're either, using heroin, using other drugs, maybe, they're underage, and they're fearful that they're going to get in trouble with the law. So some of the things that you can do is, there's this thing called California's 911 Good Samaritan's Law. And essentially what that is that if you are with someone that is experiencing an overdose and you call 911 to get them help, you're kind of safe. Like, you're safe from getting in trouble. You're protected from any arrest and charge of prosecutions if you were trying to seek medical attention to save that person's life. And I know where we work at, we talk about this with a lot of our younger kids or teenagers. And one of the things is like, oh, well, I don't want to get in trouble by my mom, or, they're at a party and their fear of like what's going to happen to them. But I always say, like, look, like, it's better to get in trouble with your mom, with your parents, with whoever, and have your friend be alive than like you dip out in that moment and leave your friend there, and now your friend's going to pass away. And it's very sad because it happens, happens a lot. It happens so often, especially with, people mixing these pills with fentanyl. And oftentimes, like, young teens are at a party and like someone's like, here, just take this really quick to relax. And like, they look innocent, they look not dangerous, and you pop them in your mouth, and like you overdose, and then everyone gets scared, and they leave, and they just leave the person there. So always remember that you'll always be okay and safe if you're trying to save someone's life from overdosing.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I didn't know that there was such thing as a Good Samaritan law. A lot of people should be aware of it. How common are these overdoses, and how can we prevent them?
Yeah, so unfortunately, they're getting more and more common. A few years ago, we saw a little rise, but wasn't as common as it is today, and it's increased, tremendously. And in LA County, 400 deaths every year are, from due to an overdose death, and then nationwide, I believe it's 70,000 people die, and that's a lot, right? That's so many, and yeah, so it's very prevalent and it's very real, and it's affecting our young people and our community and our families. And so it's important that, like, we're talking about this, right? It's important that like we know about the Good Samaritan law so we can prevent this. And there's other ways to prevent it too as well. And Alfredo is going to talk about that.
Yeah, so yeah, I just want to emphasize that overdoses are very common. They can happen anywhere at any time to anyone. There's no phase to an overdose. There's no like, typical person to an overdose. Um, Pills are very dangerous. Every time you take a pill that is either, from the street or from a doctor, but wasn't prescribed to you, it's always a gamble. So it's very important to know that when you are taking a pill that is not prescribed to you in the way that it's prescribed to you, that it's a gamble. And so definitely overdoses can be prevented. Opioid overdoses. There is a reversal drug. It's called naloxone. It's administered either injected or through the nose. For us, that are community workers, it's available to us for free. And we can inject it in someone's nose if we know that they're overdosing. So it's very important to recognize what an overdose is and also to take action. And it's very also important to know that that drug naloxone will reverse an overdose that is with an opioid. But let's say you don't know what they took. It's always good to just use it anyways if you think that they're overdosing, because they may have taken multiple substances, like they may have taken like a large amount of alcohol, or they may have taken like a benzodiazepine, like that like is Valium or Clonopin, or they may have taken like some other substance, but it may have been mixed. And so if you give them naloxone, it may help them, in one way or another. And also call 911 definitely.
Yes, thank you. So with this next question, I actually have a friend who overdosed for my church, and they are currently in the ICU, and they're fighting for their life. I know this is a really serious problem, and they're only 12 years old. So I know that these overdoses can go from any age. Have you ever had a friend who overdosed, or have you ever misused on accident a prescription drug?
Yeah, thank you, Melina, for sharing that. I know, that's super close to home, and keeping my fingers crossed and prayers to your friend. But yeah, it's so common, and I think, like we said earlier, when we were younger, like we didn't know what it was to misuse, or we didn't know what we're not supposed to do. And I remember a time when I got my wisdom teeth pulled out, like I was prescribed medication, and I just realized my mom is probably gonna watch this, so I'm like, sorry, mom, because I was like 16 years old, and I had really really bad pain, and they gave me pain medication, and I remember I took one, and I was like, oh, this is not doing anything. I took another one, and then I took one more, and I was like, finally, like the pain's going away, but then I started to feel sick and nauseous. And it just wasn't good. Like, and at the time I didn't know. We don't know, but again, this is why it's important we're having these conversations. And just another quick story is when we talk about friends. Like, when I was younger, we were on our way to a party, and I remember I had a friend driving the car, and like he stopped at a CVS or Walgreens or something like that, and he bought Robitussin, and I was so confused. Robitussin is cough medicine. And I was so confused, and I was like, "What? Like, what is that? Are you sick? Like, what's going on?" And yeah, he drank the whole bottle in the car, and like we got there, and once we got there, he was like super sluggish, like eyes low, like slurring his words, like barely able to walk. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening with this person? Like, I was just so confused. And I was young, and that was the first time I had ever like seen anybody like misuse Robitussin or cough syrup. And yeah, it was just super scary. And like, as I got older, I realized like, what it was. And people misuse it, and they mix it with alcohol and drinks and stuff to get high. But it was just super super scary. And back then you didn't need an ID card to buy it. Now you need to be 18 years old to buy any type of cough medicine, but back then, like, anybody can buy it. So we're making a little progress, but still progress is progress. It's really good.
Yeah, I guarantee you that, and everyone watching, I guarantee you all that once you already learned what misuse is. I guarantee you that you can recall a time when someone in your family or one of your friends or someone misused, because it happens so common in communities like Pomona, like El Monte, like Northwest Pasadena, or other communities where we don't have access to doctors, very often. Because we don't have health insurance, or we can't take time off of work to go see a doctor because it's so inconvenient. Well, guess what? We're sharing pills all the time because it's like, oh, like the lady that lives over here has this because she, broke her back or something happened, and the guy over there has this because he had a toothache, and it just becomes this little like neighborhood pharmacy, and it's totally not safe, like for the reasons I spoke of earlier. But it happens so often, and I think it's important to share all this information, to tell people what misuse is and how easily it can become abuse, so that they're not doing this, because it's very dangerous. It becomes normal to just take pills, and that's when we get into that danger of like, oh, my mom takes pills, and it helps her, so why can't I? I'm at a party, like, this is good, it's a pill. And if only pills like had labels on them, right, like that told you everything that's in it, and they don't. But you know like I mentioned earlier, fentanyl, 2 grains of salt. Just think about how that small that is in relation to a pill. So very dangerous. Again, you're always taking a gamble, but it happens more often than we think.
Yes. So my last question for you guys is, where can we throw away our old or expired prescription drugs?
Yeah, I can just share. So we're gonna pop in a link when we post this, but there's many safe drop-off locations all over the San Gabriel Valley. Depending on where you live, if you live in Pomona, the Pomona Police Department accepts them. They don't accept sharps. Or any like syringes or needles. In Walnut, the Walnut Diamond Bar Station, the Altadena Station, these are sheriff stations. Temple City, out City of Industry, a lot of law enforcement agencies and hospitals will accept them. They may not accept the sharps, like the syringes and needles, but they will accept the expired, unused, or unwanted medication. And Belinda probably could tell us about those special days where we do bulk drop offs of our expired and unwanted and unused medication.
Yeah, so 2 days out of the year, one in April and one in October, there's this national event or national event called National Drug and Alcohol Take, or not Drug and Alcohol, National Prescription Alcohol. It's been a long day, y'all. National Prescription Drug Take Back Day, where everyone can come and drop off their unused medication or old medications that they have. And this event is really, really important because, one, it happens nationwide. So it's not just in California. It's everyone working collectively to take these medications or these old medications, out of, our environment, from our homes. And it's really cool because you can bring as many as you have. You have, tons of bags, bring them all. And it's cool because there's no questions asked. So this is a day where, they're not going to ask you, where did you get this from? Why do you have so many medications? Things like that. And so, yeah, it's really important. It happens twice a year, like I said, in April and October. And most likely there's one somewhere in your city. So I would definitely, try to look out for it. Again, in the link below, you can also find your year-round disposal sites. You just put in your zip code and it'll show you the nearest one where you can go drop off your medications.
And this year's Drug Take Back Day is happening April 24th. And so they are drive-through style, so no need to worry with COVID-19. They're still finding ways to safely dispose of your medication.
So it looks like that's all the questions we have. Thank you, Melina, Belinda, and Alfredo for being here. Any last remarks, comments that you would like to throw out there? So there was a lot of great information shared that I think would be helpful to so many young people. We want to let everyone watching tonight that if you or someone you know does not know how to cope, is feeling overwhelmed, alone, unsupported during this time, and as a result is turning to different substances, just know that there are people who are there to help you. Know that you are not alone, and you can always reach out to any of the coalitions that participate this week, and we will connect you with the support you need. Again, RAD will be going live today, March 25th at 7:35 p.m. to answer any additional questions you might have about prescription drugs that we didn't get a chance to cover tonight. That's all we have for today. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to watch the rest of the videos in the series. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye.